I made a post about Anne Frank, and it was just a quote. It was something along the lines of just staying positive and how she has hope for the world. And I got a pretty nasty comment left by a man named Moses, and he says something very bold. My distant relative Anne Frank would side with Gaza, by the way, as do some of her relatives alive today right now. They despise everything you are and you choose to be. They would have mistaken you all for Nazis. First of all, this is the internet. Anybody can say anything. I need you to kindly provide proof for such a bold statement. Second of all, this is disrespectful. And I'm going to read from this website an article that is true because I'm in the midst of rereading her diary for the second time, and this is just common knowledge for anybody who has actually read Anne Frank's diary. Here's the thing. We have absolutely no way of knowing how Anne Frank would feel about today's Israel and Hamas war, because her life was brutally cut short by the Nazis at just 15 years old. Here's what we know for sure. In her own famous diary, Anne Frank wrote that she was interested in Zionism. Her sister, Margot Frank, was an adherent Zionist. She joined the Dutch Zionist Youth Club in 1941 and hoped to make Aliyah, which is immigration, to Mandatory Palestine, or British Mandate Palestine, where she planned on becoming a midwife for the Yishuv, which is a pre-state Jewish community in Palestine. Otto Frank, the only feminine member to survive the war, was very, very strongly pro-Israel, particularly after the Holocaust. Beforehand, he was more just plain on it, neutral, though he was never anti-Zionist. In fact, in the 1970s, Otto had a disagreement with the Anne Frank house as he demanded that museum statues explicitly affirmed Israel's right to exist, a right much of today's keffiyeh-wearing pro-Palestine movement doesn't accept. We don't know how Anne would feel today, but we do know how most Holocaust survivors feel. Not only do most Holocaust survivors, like most Jews, support Israel, but 49% of today's remaining 245,000 survivors live in Israel. The numbers may have fluctuated as people pass on. And even Anne Frank's best friend, Hannah, immigrated to Israel. So here we go. Appropriation of our trauma again. This is called Holocaust inversion. That is the depiction of Jews and/or Israelis as Nazis, crypto-Nazis, or worse than the Nazis, and the Palestinians as the true victims of the Holocaust. This is a blatant appropriation of the Jewish people's worth collective trauma. Now, this person goes on to say, it's not to say that Palestinians don't endure pain. Of course they do. Both sides endure pain. But this is what you're doing right here is Holocaust inversion and putting an identity upon a 15-year-old girl murdered by the Nazis. And here you are calling fellow Jews Nazis. This person says, at a certain point, it almost looks like these people have Holocaust envy, which is bizarre and frankly deeply disturbing. And here we go. Even more infuriating, not even did Palestinian Arab leadership collaborate with the Nazis during the Holocaust and in 1948, but public opinion polls from the time period demonstrate most Palestinian Arabs favored Nazi Germany. Enough. You don't get to take this one from us because your ancestors, too, were complicit during the Holocaust. Stop imposing identities on Jews. Anne Frank was a Jewish child. She was born in Germany and later become Dutch. Never in her lifetime would she have worn a Palestinian keffiyeh, because at that time, the Palestinian keffiyeh was the official uniform. British officer Sir John Bagut Club Desert Patrol comprised of Palestinian and Jordanian Arab Bedouins, loyal to the British police force in Mandatory Palestine. Since Anne Frank was neither a Bedouin nor a member of Glob's Desert Patrol, putting the keffiyeh on her, a murdered child, is nothing but imposing an identity on her that isn't hers. If you actually cared about Anne Frank, you would care about this. On November 7, 2024, a premeditated pogrom took place in the streets of Amsterdam. Anne Frank's Amsterdam, which, if you don't know, is in the Netherlands. Thousands of pro-Palestinian supporters ambushed Israeli Maccabi Tel Aviv fans as they were leaving a Maccabi Tel Aviv AFC Ajax soccer match. Much like on October 7th, the perpetrators live-streamed themselves stabbing Israelis and Jews, running over Israelis and Jews, throwing firecrackers at Israelis and Jews, and beating Israelis and Jews to a pulp. As the Amsterdam police looked the other way, they stole their phones and passports, and for some time, some of the victims were missing. Jews tried to hide in a canal, in boats, and a KFC, and more just like the Franks hid in an attic. The perpetrators forced the victims to shout, "Free Palestine!" They attacked not just men, but women and children. Not all of the victims were Maccabi Tel Aviv fans or Israelis, but all of the victims were Jews, or perceived to be Jews. For over a year, Dutch Jewish community leaders have warned of hostile, dangerous environment for Jews in the Netherlands, and in Amsterdam more specifically. The Central Jewish Constellation, the official Jewish umbrella organization in the Netherlands, defined the November 7th mob attacks as a pogrom and tied it to the growing anti-Semitic climate in the country, which existed long before any Maccabi Tel Aviv fans showed up in Amsterdam. So once again, let Anne Frank rest.